In your school, they're going to teach you about English and about math and about a lot of different things like that. They will not teach you social skills. It's not a class, but it's your responsibility to learn it anyway, because all of the opportunities you're going to get in your life are going to be because of people and how they feel about you.
Hey, welcome to Manufacturers Make Strides. Today, I had a conversation with Angelo D'Amico, president of the Canada Rubber Company. And Angelo has a really fascinating journey. He started out in economics. He was then pulled into lean consulting. And now he's been chosen as the values-driven success to lead a long-standing manufacturing business. And across this episode, Angelo returns again and again to this single idea that processes only work when people come first. He shares how he learned to dollarize, waste, and prioritize constraints, but also why lean initiatives fail when they ignore human expertise, trust, and buy-in. And we then explore ways on what happens when success is achieved in ways that break your values, and why so many manufacturing owners struggle with succession, and how Angelo became the person that people want to hand things to without ever applying for a job. He talks openly about trust, duty, service-oriented leadership, and why opportunities tend to flow towards those who reduce the risk for others. And Angelo also brings practical insight from running a growing manufacturing operation, from implementing a new ERP system to rebuilding culture post-pandemic to creating a workplace where even the maintenance staff can walk into the CEO's office unannounced. And then late on in the episode, he shares some simple steps leaders can take today to shift their focus from processes back to people, including the powerful question that he asks on the factory floor: what's the biggest headache in your day? So let's jump straight into my conversation with Angelo D'Amico right now. Hope you enjoy it. Hey, Angelo, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm well, Martin. How are you?
Great, thanks. Yeah, really good. Really excited to have this. I'm sure it's going to be a broad-reaching chat with you today. But first off, whereabouts are you in the world today? Where are you joining from?
Calling in today from just outside of Toronto, Canada.
What's the weather like that? I'm over in the UK. We've just had our first snowfall of the season, of the year. How's it for you?
I wish it were better. We will get snow starting typically end of November into maybe even late December, the first snowfall. And this year we got, I think, 4 or 5 snowfalls already. So we're off to a good head start now this year, and we're all excited to see where that takes us.
Braced for a good winter.
You got it.
Sure. All right, great. So I'm interested in getting your background and where you're from. But first off, I just want to jump in and get your thoughts on something. So what would you say happens to a company when processes start to matter more than the people in the company?
Oof. Okay. So heavy right away. I think
Yeah.
That's fine. Let's do it. Let's jump in. I think when we focus on processes specifically, and firstly, I come from a background of consulting where process improvement is a strong foundation for me technically. So it's not that I don't value processes or the condition or function of processes and their value in creating what customers need. It's not that I don't see value in that. They are very important. But I think when you focus on those as the primary and not the foundational thing that they depend on, which are the people that make the processes happen, I think you've just skipped a step. So it's like saying, let's architect all this thing, but let's not worry about the quality of the materials, or let's not worry about who we're getting it from. So you can build something that looks really shiny and nice on paper, but doesn't function very well, either because its design doesn't consider the people who are doing it, or the people who are doing it just don't feel bought in. And if people aren't aware and engaged, it's like everything you're doing is multiplied by that. And if that's 0 or if that's really low, then you're getting all that energy you think you're putting in times could be 0 or 0.1, whatever it is, you're really going to get a low outcome result. So I think for me, to put it simply, I just think that people are more foundational and that processes depend on them, not the other way around. And I don't even think that's really a challenging thing to say, but I think if people just don't necessarily pause to think about those things sometimes, and maybe if we just do pause to think about those and find out that one is dependent on the other and recognize that, and what can we do about that? maybe we'll actually get better processes in the end anyway. So less either or and more which one has dependence.
Yeah, and the order, it's interesting that you mentioned the order. So, people first, and it's maybe choosing a different kind of process, or it's maybe customizing that process for this group of people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a sequencing. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for
Yeah.
jumping in there.
Yeah, no problem.
So you mentioned you started off with a consulting background and you've now moved to the more manufacturing space. So tell us about that then. How did your career start out?
Yeah, so I have a degree in economics. When I was nearing the end of my degree, I was approached by somebody who had a consulting business who wanted to see if I would jump in on a project with them. And this was a lean manufacturing type of a consulting approach. So I was brought in to kind of bring an economic seriousness to those efforts, because sometimes I think those things are done in a little bit of a fluffy way. And so to the credit of this practitioner, they thought, let's kill that. Let's make it about dollars and do lean, but let's do lean that makes a measurable impact and show customers that. So I jumped into consulting that way by invitation, basically. After doing a couple of projects like that together, I was asked to continue doing so on a permanent basis. And I kind of took that risk on a small boutique firm that I believed in, person I really believed in. So we went for about, I think I spent just over a decade working with specifically manufacturers and distributors who generally served businesses. So these are B2B companies, generally not B2C companies. And so I got to see a lot of different case examples of things people were doing right and doing wrong. And that could be from a leadership perspective, a process perspective, a value proposition perspective, whatever it might be. Even people addressing constraints that aren't the real constraints. Let's endlessly improve the process when maybe the constraint is the ability to gain business in the marketplace, like the relevance or the awareness. So I got to see just so many different examples where over time, you just gain those insights about, oh, okay, so when this is going wrong, you got to look in these other areas too. And so just going into one or two places might not have done that, but over a decade of doing it really did teach me that. So I was really quite lucky to be in that position where sometimes we're talking about process level or operational level things, but I was often invited in by necessity into leadership conversations as well. And so getting to see the right and wrong at that level too was really impactful on me. So that was the consulting side. And then how did that bring me into manufacturing, I suppose, is the next question.
Well, can I just jump in there for a second? Because, you mentioned something I want to come back to. So you said kind of lean with a combination of finance, kind of economics in there, versus there's some lean projects can get a little bit fluffy or maybe just optimizing for the sake of optimizing. So, just drill into that a bit more. And have you got any stories from that time of where that approach made a big difference?
Yeah, so we were attempting to dollarize the waste in a lot of cases. And so we were creating ways that you could dollarize the work that was being done so that when you made a change, you could know where that impact would be, or even ahead of time, hypothetically, where that impact would be. Sometimes improving a process and having it work better doesn't change the throughput because it's not the constraint area in the first place, right? So being able to illustrate those things really would get people on board. But that still doesn't change the fact that doing the work of making change had to happen by the people who did the work. So we did take a dollars approach to this, but that never superseded the fact that we always came in with the message, this is happening through people and their expertise. Like, we were very non-prescriptive. It was very much like the people who do the work are the experts. Our role is to bring in a framework to let their expertise be productive in making improvement. And I think that letting the people be primary there, again, just like what we said before, was critical.
Yeah, so less in the people, but I suppose that approach it's using the finance and numbers to choose where that team or where that group of people should focus their expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. So identifying priorities and levers, really. And you have I think in your line of work, this is probably relevant for you as well, trying to zone in on areas where improvement is required and creating those types of improvement as well. Am I right to say that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think one of the challenges for people generally is there's never a shortage of opportunities of where you could put your time, your energy, people's expertise. So it's, I think, a challenge for a lot of people is figuring out what the 20% are that will give that the Pareto impact and give the 80% of benefits will be. So that's that's why I was kind of interested and I picked up on that. That's, to me, kind of stood out as an interesting approach of deciding you've got this great team of people to put on a project. How do you decide what the priorities are to get them to focus their energies on?
Yeah. So I think I really like the point that you made that there's so many things we could focus on and that we have finite energy and time and that sort of thing. We're talking about values today, and I think there's a really important connection to make now that we can talk about in more depth later, but I don't want to let that opportunity pass. And that's making the right decision is important because we want to succeed and not fail. That's fine. I think that's an obvious thing to say. But another thing that might not be quite as obvious is there are a number of ways we can succeed, and they're not all equally true to our values. And when we succeed in ways that aren't true to our values, that creates things like burnout and just a lack of interest. I know that for me personally, but I also try to stay tuned with that. Are people doing things that they really care about? Some people are geared a certain way, and you have to kind of be in tune with that. But you also have to, I think, if you're a leader in a business, be really in tune with that because your whole value system is integrated with that company's value system. And if you're pursuing success arbitrarily without a filter value, if it's only a financial value, you'll find that you might make financial steps forward, but it'll be at a cost of your joy and the joy of everybody involved. And I think without that joy, it's hard to answer the question, hey, when there are hard times, why should we stick with this and see it through to the next good time? So I think the point you made about there's so many options we have is really important to think about, not just in terms of success failure, but all the different forms that success might take.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I'm glad you brought up about the values early on because I'd be interested if you had any stories or kind of recollections of a situation like this. Does anything come to mind where you've had to make a tough decision and you've done it based on your values, but yeah, maybe it was a difficult decision because it was based on the values of the many options that you could have decided on, and how that panned out?
Yes, a couple ones that we didn't, or I didn't take. As a company who is in a good financial position, we sometimes have the opportunity to purchase other companies, or we get those types of offers. And when we're looking at those opportunities, there are opportunities that on paper are profitable that we pass on in hopes that we'll get other profitable opportunities in the future, even though we have one on our plate right now, just because we think, would we have fun with this? If we commit our resources financially and energy wise to this thing and something else comes on our table tomorrow that we think would be interesting, will we resent the fact that we took this opportunity because it was the thing we saw first? So we do pass on opportunities for that reason. Secondly, when I was first given the opportunity to join the company I'm with now, I was given that opportunity to join individually. Now, I was only familiar with the company that brought me in because of my consulting, and I owed that to one person who brought me into his consulting business. So I asked what might happen to this other person. Should I do that? Did they consider that person in the offer? And the answer was not, that they had not. Nothing against that person, a lot of respect and trust in that person, but they were just looking to fill one position. And so I was one person, and I was the person that they needed for that specific role. So I passed. I thought that opportunity was, not a negotiation, but that it was just gone. And it was gone. And a couple of years later, I was reapproached with, we've found a way to make it work. And so finally we started having a conversation. But in the moment when I passed, I legitimately was passing. I was passing on ownership. I was passing on something that was really interesting to me. But I was committed to somebody who I really owe for the opportunity in the first place, for the fact that I would be in that position. So for me, it's easy. It's a values decision. It wasn't necessarily easy, but if I'd have succeeded on values I didn't believe in, I mean, you still got to look in yourself in the mirror, and you still got to, I think, look at your family, and maybe even if some people listening might be raising a family, and you got to think about who you are and who you want people to know you as, and how you sleep at night. So those are just a couple of easy examples, I think.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. You brought up there, or you intimated, I think you mentioned this to me in an earlier conversation, but you mentioned it there, that you've never applied for a job. People have reached out to you. So just tell me more about that. Why do you think that's been the case for you?
So I think, to be really corny, I'm gonna quote my mother. Is that all right?
Go for it.
Is that a first on the podcast?
Love that.
Yeah. So when I was quite young, we lived in a small town, and as I was heading to elementary school and in the mix with all the kids in the school, something stuck with me that she mentioned one time. And I think she was kind of an inadvertent philosopher, my mom. Looking at all the kind of advice she gave growing up, I kind of think, oh, it's so funny that she thought these ways, because it was definitely not an intentional approach, but it happened. She said, in your school, they're going to teach you about English and about math and about a lot of different things like that. They will not teach you social skills. It's not a class, but it's your responsibility to learn it anyway, because all of the opportunities you're going to get in your life are going to be because of people and how they feel about you. So social skills are going to be important. I think one of the products of that, I might have been a little too young for that to take that advice properly. It landed with me, but my understanding of it kind of grows as I grow, I would say. So what I kind of did was I grew up with a very programmatic, I'm a little bit introverted, and it's a little programmatic way to look at the world and fit myself in and see what people need and want and try to help and be helpful. So I think if not for that little provocation, that little nudge, maybe I wouldn't have set about doing that in practice. And that became a daily thing for me. And it turned me into somebody who I think was measured enough and observant enough with people that they felt a little bit of trust in me. So I've had a few business opportunities that had to stack on top of one another for me to kind of sit where I sit now. And I think those ultimately came because people trusted that I would uphold something that they built, that they spent a lot of work and put a lot of heart into. And so they felt they could trust that. It wasn't just could I execute the work. It was am I kind of the person that has enough integrity, but also maybe a sense of duty enough to appreciate what they've done, why they've done it, and serve that a little bit. So there's a technical confidence, but I think there's also a bit of a soft confidence there as well. And so I feel strongly that that's been a door opener for me throughout my life.
It's funny, I was having a conversation with someone earlier today who does a lot of kind of business change, turnarounds and kind of rescuing. And he said that one of the challenges that he sees at the moment is that there's kind of a generation of business owners coming up for retirement, wanting to let go and kind of pass it on to the next generation, but they're really struggling for a couple of reasons to hand over. Because one, they don't really want to let go, but also they don't know how to let go in a way that with that trust to hand it over to the next generation. So how does, maybe you can give a bit more insight into that. When that works well, how does that pan out?
Again, when I was consulting, I saw the same thing. I went in business after business and I saw sometimes the owners were individuals. Sometimes they were family businesses and it might be an individual or a couple and their children or something like that. But in any case, I saw the same thing and I noted it quite early that there is this population of people who have businesses who would love nothing more than to get some freedom, even if it wasn't to relinquish the whole thing, but it would be they're so entrenched in their businesses. They need to have a chapter of their life where they get a little bit more freedom and life's not just about that business, but they feel that they're the ones spinning all the plates. And if they stop spinning those plates, they're going to fall. And they don't trust that there's anybody else who might spin those plates in a way that they believe in. So it's not just, again, can you technically do it? Because I'm sure they could go scoop someone up out of school and say, here, you got this education or this resume or whatever it is. And they might get the hard skills. But like you said, I think they don't trust that the legacy about the values and the heart about what they built is going to be maintained and be taken seriously. So I noticed that pretty early on as well. And without it being a strategy to ever be proposed any sort of positions, I always made it a point that I need to understand how they feel about that part of their business. And I need to be a contributor to that. So if I was talking, sometimes I would speak to leadership teams about succession plans without myself being in the mix. But we would talk about this very thing. And so I think that the person you were speaking to is absolutely right. There's a mismatch right now. There's an oversupply of people who want to pass something down of real value. And there's an undersupply of people demonstrating that they have the seriousness to do it. So I don't know how we're going to reconcile that. I think I'm in my position because I was one of the people that they thought they could. And so great for me. But I think people don't necessarily realize in my generation that, and younger even, but I think they don't realize just what an abundance of opportunity there is if you just take the duty seriously, take the work seriously, and make sure that, your career's not all about you. It's very easy to think your career is about you. Your career is your vessel for helping out in the world. It's taking the whatever core stuff that you have that's unique, your fingerprint in capability, and saying, I'm going to go and put that to use wherever gravity pulls it. And where people keep asking you to help is the thing that you're supposed to do, I think. And so I would really recommend that people who want to do well in their careers, especially young people who want opportunities, don't just think about how do I get my work done in an impressive way. I think that's really a superficial way. That's a good way to get a raise, maybe. It's not a good way to start being considered for leading a business.
So how would you say you in this, when you were kind of chosen for the succession for Canada Rubber, then would you say it was that your values aligned with the previous owner who was looking for succession, or do you think you did something to pull you towards him, that you were like you consciously aligned yourself?
I do. So I'll answer your question. Before I say that though, I want to make sure that no matter what alignment I might have had with the leadership team who selected me for this opportunity, this wasn't actually the only client who felt this way and who would have given me such an opportunity. So it's not some happenstance. It's really a trend that can be observed and it's repeatable. So I think that's important, because it wasn't just some coin flip that happened, and not to make it more about me than it ought to be, but it is a little bit about just like you said, a scarcity of options. So in this particular case, so it wasn't an individual who chose me, but it was a team of 5 people. And yes, so I'd been consulting with them for a while. I think that they appreciated that the ways that I had helped them so far, but I think that they also appreciated that though I was at an arm's length as a third party, I was integrated with the culture of the people. I got along with people and gave them my time and spoke to them when I was around, and again, didn't make the work all about me. I tried to really understand the heart of the company and execute work and initiatives in a way that emphasized those values. And so I think what happened was I became, even as a third party, a tool for exemplifying the values across the business. So the leadership team had the values, but I was just one other person that could make those values spread within the company. And so I think they really said, okay, well, you have some technical capabilities and you've already proven to us that not only can you share our values, but you've got an ability to kind of take those values and make sure that they reach all the different corners. We really want that. And they were actually offered. Private equity did try to buy this company. It would have been all too easy to just walk, but the leadership of the company was so values oriented that it really thought the people in the company would be better off if they found somebody with similar values to lead the way.
Got you. Okay. So what do you think the best way then is? So you were kind of one of several people, I'm sure, who were a conduit for spreading the values from the leadership out through the company. How would you say that happens? What's the best way, or what are some of the options of how to do that?
So I think at the base of it, I do believe that we should approach our work with a spirit of helping. Secondly, I think that leadership is silently elected to the person or people who everybody feels they trust to make decisions with their best interest at heart. So when people collectively feel that when you make a decision, you do it with consideration of what their best interests are, not just yours, you gain the influence and you become a leader culturally, if not in role. So I think that has to be there. You have to be the one who considers what's best for everybody, and not in the short term. I think that leaders in companies have the unique kind of position of having to have the broadest and longest duration in their mind when they're making decisions. So you have to think about a wider span of people, the people in the company, plus your suppliers, your customers, your peers, and other people who you collaborate with to make the business work. But then you also have to think over a longer frame of time. So I don't think that leaders should just think, how can I maximize my short-term sympathy? Because I think that's actually could be a recipe for disaster. I think what they need to think is, how do I meet people's needs today the best way possible without sacrificing or jeopardizing the sustainability of what we all need in the long run collectively? So that's challenging, but if you can demonstrate to people that you're not better, you don't think you're better than they are, you're willing to go and listen and learn from them. And then when a change happens, it's because it's informed by them. If it's going to impact them, it should also be informed by them on the front end. I think that's where you gain that currency. And I would add lastly that I also strongly believe that it takes far fewer incidents of not doing that to destroy it than it takes to earn it. So you could do it right 10 times, do it wrong twice, and you're no better than zero. So I really think consistency is important there.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, we're getting a nice clear picture now. I just want to throw something out that just kind of occurred to me whilst you were chatting through there. In terms of manufacturing businesses and society as a whole, what kind of contribution do you think manufacturing, a career spent in manufacturing, gives back to society?
I mean, in an obvious way, it makes some of the products that make the world go round. So in my company, for example, we're involved in, there's agriculture, forestry, construction, mining, everything, automotive. So there's things in your house, there's parts of the car that you drive, we're in everything. And that's just true for a lot of manufacturers. They're not all making some sort of final product that's, hey, buy this shiny thing, it's got our name on it. And that's great when they do. But lots of times they're just these silent contributors, right? So maybe there's a lesson there in a contribution can be for contribution's sake, and contribution doesn't have to always have your name on the front. It's not really about that. So I know Canada Rubber's never slapped, there's no sticker on the front of anything that says Canada Rubber, but there are parts in other things that are from Canada Rubber, and important ones, right? And so I think important contributions, they don't have to be on stage all the time. And I think we as people don't have to be on stage all the time. And so it's not always about credit, but it is still about relationships. So that's maybe a philosophical lesson from it. But I think also more tangibly, giving to the world in terms of what it physically produces is obvious. We can also be a little bit philanthropic, or we can be a little bit more environmental, where manufacturing companies in small towns especially sometimes are the largest companies in their areas. And so there's a center of gravity about that. That might not be true when you're talking about somewhere that has a lot of large financial institutions and things like that. But when you're talking about when you go 30 minutes outside of any major city, you've got hardworking solopreneurs and small businesses. And then you always have a sprinkling of manufacturing, and they tend to be the big employers and the kind of, like I said, the areas of gravity. And what impact can they be making locally? Because they're the ones who can support their hospitals, their arts groups, things that are worthy. So they can have a massive difference, even if a small company isn't necessarily going to change the world just all by themselves. But if collectively manufacturers say, hey, we throw a little bit of weight in our community. The question is, can you throw a little bit of that weight in a positive way? And I'm lucky to work in an area where we have a number of manufacturers who are doing exactly that. And I encourage all of my peers in manufacturing who are listening to this everywhere that you can make a difference in your community if you're not already. So think about that, and your people will value it too. You'll get people who value that.
Okay, that's nice. And if you look at the kind of the global impact of all of those, it's a lot of those companies, sustaining company communities kind of all over the world. And yeah, it rolls up, doesn't it? It grows.
Yeah, and it's that recognition that the community is not there for them. Yes, the community comes and works there, and the community in some extent benefits just from its presence, but it's not enough to just say, hey, well, we employ people in this area. It's also, we wouldn't exist if not for this, if not for these people, and if not for this place being here for us, and we have to care for it back.
So if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a follow on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That would help us to keep bringing authentic manufacturing conversations with the people who are shaping our industry. Thank you. So how would you say that you make your team feel valued and connected? We're in a global business world. You're in Canada Rubber. I'm sure it's a very competitive market for you, kind of financially and operationally. Yeah. How do you keep that focus on your team?
Yeah. If I understand the question correctly, it's that sometimes it can be hard to be people focused when there's often not a lot of room. You feel there might not be a lot of room for that because we must be financially performance focused just to even be here tomorrow. So then where do we make the capacity to do something else and that not be a trade-off that's crippling to our company financially?
Well, that's interesting because that's the assumption under that question, isn't it? But maybe that's an incorrect assumption.
Yeah. And so that's what I'm kind of pointing out is that, is it really an either or thing, right? So I don't think that when we empower people to change processes instead of prescribing, that we get worse processes or less efficient and productive processes. So there's profit in that. I think when we work with even third parties, but we work with them in a more human way and a less transactional way, I think they try harder for us as well. So I don't see a conflict there. Now, for more, just like, if you're looking for examples about how it's done and not philosophically, like, why would you spend the time? So that's the why would we spend the time? Because I think ultimately it is. So we're a little bit transparent, obviously, about how we're doing from a financial performance perspective. And people want to be rewarded and make a fair living. And we covered that. I think if you don't do that, is a lot of people say that they don't want all the periphery fluff. But I think that might be a situation where if they're not fair wages and that sort of thing to begin with, you run the risk of doing things instead of, and then that's not fair to people. So I think as long as then that's been covered as a foundation, then we move to things like, I guess in Canada, so employee appreciation is 1 day a year. We hold 2 employee appreciation days a year, but we also have food events and engagement events at least once a month. So food trucks, no reason things. Like later this month, we're actually having a day where we've given people a number of movies to pick from that are currently in theater that are available to stream though. And we're going to give them time during business hours to have popcorn and snacks and all that and watch these movies during business hours. We'll have show times and we'll all do that, right? When I joined Canada Rubber, if I go back some years now, foundationally for me, how to take a people approach and not just a hard skills approach or a financial approach. You might say that like a lot of people in leadership, they feel a real pressure, and I can appreciate it. It's this real pressure that you must perform because there's people looking at you and you're it, right? It stops with you. And where's that performance? So one of the first things I did when I first came to Canada Rubber was I gave myself the freedom to not be as focused on that for a period of time. I spent the first 3 months at the company acknowledging that I didn't know anything and going place to place in the company, speaking to people about how it works, what kind of systems are supporting them and not, how it's all functioning, and what's the biggest headaches in their day. As I did that, they opened up to me about their daily challenges. They got to know that I'm not better than the work that they do, and therefore I'm not better than them. Because I think when we never dive into the work level, what does that say to people? And I don't think it's that we have to learn their work, but I do think we have to dive in and be concerned with it. So they would teach me about their headaches and challenges. But in those conversations, I also got to know the names of the people in their families and the things they were going through in their life and what their hobbies were and what they did before this. And in some cases, what they want to do next, because Canada Rubber is not everybody's long-term career. For a lot of people, it is, but we've got people in their early 20s with degrees and things that have nothing to do with what we're doing. And they still have their eye on that. And great. Like if we can be the best stepping stone we can be, there's no hard feelings about that. I'm all for it. So yeah, so I hope I've answered that in a couple of different ways. For me, I got on people's level. For the company, we engage with them frequently in kind of fun ways that show that they're not the means to an end. And from a financial versus people perspective, that I don't think there's a contradiction.
Got you. So what do you think the role of a CEO is?
There's a few things, but I kind of look at a business in 4 chunks. So I look at it as the strategy and business model, which includes the direction, purpose, all those types of things. So it's how it works kind of factually to be a profit generating thing. I look at the financial management of the company as a second thing. The third one is the process system. And then the fourth one is people and culture. And those are not in the order of primacy. So I think that the role of the CEO is to be concerned with those 4 things and their health systematically in a way that considers the long term and all of the parties involved.
Got you. So I'm not 100% sure how you describe this, but you said not necessarily in that order, with people last.
The reason I say people last, the reason I say people last is because my mental model is a square, and it's in the bottom right quadrant of the graphic I have in my head. But what would I issue primacy?
Is there an order? Yeah, is there an order?
No.
To those things?
No. I would say they're all so interdependent that situationally there is certainly an order. Contextually, there can certainly be an order. But if any one of those things falls out, the whole thing falls out. So it's like a house of cards a little bit. So as are we as people in companies, all interdependent on one another. So there are times when you know which one of those 4 is the wobbly leg, and you must give it primacy because the whole thing will fall if you don't. But there's none that you would say, which one would I remove from this stool and feel comfortable sitting on the stool? There's just none of them. You just wouldn't do it.
So I'm wondering now I think you've got a really interesting outlook on this. I'm wondering how you were balanced, just thinking through what you previously said, that it's a CEO's kind of role to set the direction, set that clear business model and direction of the company so that there's a profitable business model behind there. But then also, on the other hand, be there as a kind of, I don't think you said the word servant, but I think you maybe said serve the people in the company. So how do you balance those two seemingly possibly opposites of the role?
Yeah. So I would say I'm not some person who sequesters myself to achieve the former, so when I'm talking about the direction and the business model, there's a lot of feedback that's coming from all parts of the business as I'm working to, generally when you're working on improvements to those things, your goal is not, unless there's a crisis, your goal is not how do we take a 180 every time we go to the planning table. It's what kind of tweaks do we have to make to keep this thing on track, right? And those alignments, I think they come from all the people who are interacting with the customer, everyone's got internal customers in the company, they're talking to your vendors, all these things. So that's the feedback you need to make that process work. So it's not independent in the first place. But then also just I've laughed before with some people that even like the maintenance person in our company, he he doesn't make, if he wants to talk to me, he doesn't make an appointment like, hey, next week, have you got any time? Let me know what day works for you. He walks into my open door office. He makes a joke at my expense. He sits down and we just chat about family, about work, whatever. And we solve whatever the problem is he came in there for. We get to it. That's fine. But it's not rushed and it's not appointment based. And I'm not some other level that they don't have access to. So I think that that's really important. So that I view myself as just one person that's in that deck of cards, that house of cards. Yes, I have I think I bring something to the table that's needed by the company. But at the end of the day, so does every single person, because I actually don't know how to do all the things that they do. And most of the people they work beside don't know how to do what they do. And if no one does that thing, it doesn't work. So there's a humility, I think, or at least there has to be a real recognition that your position doesn't equal like a dependence, that everything is dependent on you. But I think you ought to serve that whole collective effort with an aim, right? So providing it an aim, but you don't aim independently of the feedback of the people who speak to the customers and suppliers and one another, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So yeah, you're that central role who kind of understands other people's expertise, but can help give the direction. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like I said, I think that in my role, I have to be concerned about the longer term and the broader range of people. So where people might tell me the pains in a more finite way, I need to aggregate that and build a bigger picture of the company's pains and gains and opportunities, and then chart the course that solves for as many of those things as possible.
Yeah. So in that situation, with either at level really with those leaders or down at the level of the maintenance guy in the plant, how do you approach giving them accountability without doing, how do you approach accountability within your team?
So I think maybe I'll talk about it in two different ways. So in one way, accountability in an everyday, nothing's going wrong way. We do have a very well-defined process system. Our KPI dash was made by us and includes all the documentation and the dates of review and the KPIs that are warranted, and they're reviewed regularly. So it's hard to escape just the nuts and bolts of what we have to be observing, but then also taking action on. And so that's in the day-to-day way, how we get accountability. We've defined it and we've got metrics and all these things. And I think probably a lot of people are doing that, right? And that's kind of, I would say, maybe the easier part. The when everything goes awry part is like more case by case. So if, for example, if we're in a customer negotiation and the customer's being unfair to us or acting not in accordance with our values, they could be even fairly abrasive or abusive to people because maybe they just don't have the same values. If somebody in our company were to respond in kind to that, we would shut that down. I would have that talk. I would take over that conversation. We'd correct that and they would get some coaching. When somebody in the company really treats somebody else really badly, I mean, I've had a recent example where that did happen. And I mean, the conversation was honest. It was the same kind of conversation I would have if this happened to anybody I love in my life. And it was, I know we share a lot of the same values. And I know that's probably disappointing that it happened to you as well. So I'm not here to slap you on the wrist, but I am here to say that that's not good enough for you and that's not good enough for the company. And whatever it is that caused that isn't justification for it. And so we need to make it better, and B, there needs to be stronger self-control and restraint. And then a conversation about maybe where did that pressure even come from? Might not have come from the office. So it's that person's decision what they want to go into, but maybe they want to talk about what led to it from a work perspective or a non-work perspective. I'm not trying to rush that conversation and check the box. Did I slap them on the wrist sufficiently that they won't do it again? I don't care about that. I want them to not do it again, but I want them to know that I really value them, and that this isn't just about saying like, hey, you disappointed me, because who am I? I think you kind of disappointed yourself, and I think that you know what this whole endeavor is about, and you want this to be a safe place when you get here just as much as anybody. So don't take that away from your peers. So those are the kind of conversations that I do have. And it's not just like, here, HR, you go deal with that. Like, I'm involved in those conversations as much as I can be. And it's very much not a harsh reprimanding conversation. It's a really human thing, because there shouldn't be this line, I think, where people put their work hat on and now they forget how to be a normal person. And I think that just is so easy, especially in roles like mine, because you do get rewarded for speaking with a tone of confidence like I'm doing right now. When you speak with this kind of confident, certain tone, people respond to that. And that's what's gotten you all these opportunities and opened all these doors. But when you get into those scenarios, you need to not be that person. You need to stop being that person.
Okay, perfect. I have a couple of follow-up questions then that I'd like to ask you more on. First one is that scenario that you came up with before. Have you got a story? And I'd be interested what decision you made of where a customer has treated someone in your team, maybe with a disrespect against your values. What would you do, or what did you do in a situation where that continued?
So we've not had an example where we did it, we intervened, and the same person made the same mistake. Other people in the same company might have, but we addressed them all individually. I can't give you an example of where somebody acted in a way that was sort of abusive to the company. We directly addressed it and they persisted that way. It's always been really effective to address it head on. And again, humanly, like I don't come in there like, hey, guess who I am? And I'm going to like win this conversation. You see people on the other side of a call, like the one we were on, right? So we would do this in my workplace and somebody will get on the other end with their suit and tie and their tie clip and their cuff links, and they're ready to just give you hell and look as professional as they can. But guess what? They're also in their basement, and they've got their family upstairs or whatever. And so I think I'm trying to crack through to that level with people. I know that we're frustrating you right now, but let me reassure you that we share your urgency on this. So I think the first thing is what are they concerned about and how are we disarming that? Because obviously they've lost trust somewhere. So I address the trust issue first. You can trust that we're going to take this seriously. Here's why. After I've addressed that, I kind of get to, and by the way, when we're working through this, I'd really appreciate if we could stick to this agreement about what we value as a collective group. Our company doesn't do business with people who don't have these values. I think your company has those values or expects those values from you and everyone on your team. Can we agree to that? And I have had really strong success in getting that. It doesn't mean everybody always agrees to the same outcome you want them to. If you're negotiating, they're not just going to say, okay, then you win. But it does mean that they're going to go through the process with that in mind. And if in small ways they have lapses, I now have a conversation I can hearken back to and say, hey, we talked about that. And I don't have to repeat the whole thing. So that's the best I can give you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah, I've probably had similar experiences with either people in our team or with customers, and I think getting that trust and that personal understanding first is super important. We've had situations where we were like quite stressed or upset about something. We had a conversation and we realized there was something completely else going on in that person's personal life, which was causing things, and what we thought was about us was actually not at all. It was about what this person was dealing about in their life. So yeah, it's worth having that conversation and building trust first, isn't it, to understand what page you're both on.
It's often it's not coming from nowhere. I guess we can make that assumption. So maybe it's that if it's one of our customers, it could be that a lot of their suppliers are not treating them with good values. And so they come into it with an expectation that we didn't build that expectation, but real experiences in their life did. And so I don't want to discount that. So it's up to us to show them that we're not fitting that mold.
Yeah, we're there to help. Yeah, we don't know what else is kind of going on for you at the moment, but yeah, we
can't take offense to those things
for you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can we jump now into a section we call Myths and Truths? Bit of a change in pace.
Sure.
Let's give it a shot. Opportunity finds you when people trust who you are. Is that a myth or a truth?
Truth.
How so?
So I think I didn't want to elaborate too much because I've probably spoken about this a lot today, but that's the story of my career. I think it's try to be the person that people can trust will make decisions with their best interest at heart. And with that in mind, or that you really want to help genuinely, with that in mind, people will give you an opportunity they want you closer, right? Because then you become part of the safety net for them. So you have utility for them in that you represent risk reduction for that person in whatever they're going through. If you could be a risk reducer for other people, then why wouldn't they advocate for you to come with them where they're going, or to be a good replacement because they believe in you? So you're not now in competition with them. You're a support system for them. So people will be a lot more likely to advocate for you when they really want you around and want to keep you close, because it's a real benefit for them too.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Success is about chasing the next big title.
All right, you're throwing me rhetoricals now. So no, it's a myth. I think that I've never had title in my mind, and I don't think that some of the people I admire the most have either. But that's not to say I condemn or don't recognize the role of personal achievement. So I look at my own career as a bit of a self-test. So I think I have integrity and good values, and that I am improving that over time. I think that. I also think that I have a grasp on certain niche areas within business, and I'm improving on that over time. The test about whether that's true is that if I can achieve certain things materially, in those might be promotions or requests. So a lot of times they're not even in my company. So I might get asked by an association to do a talk on something, or to head a round table, or lend advice in some area, or sit on a board for something. And I sit on a couple not-for-profit boards in my area. But all of that is, to me, it's achievement, and it's personal goals and achievements. So I don't mean to condemn the pursuit of your own goals. I'm not trying to say that people should be so virtuous that they don't have any ambition. It's not that. It's about, I think, a balance between those things. And so people who seem...
and you think that I think what you're saying is the titles will come if you're making progress towards your goals and the kind of self-improvement of yourself and your growth, that the titles will probably come along the way if they're the right fit for you, and your life plan.
I think in that way, instead of opening doors in a direction that you're pointing in, things that you are an advantageous tool for suck you in towards them. And it's different than bulldozing your way in one direction that you have. So I don't have a certain direction, but I'm willing to be flexible and get pulled in the direction where I'm of value. And by being responsive to that and not having this, like, I must go this way. So I can't say that if you do this, you will get all these opportunities. And I especially can't say that you'll get them in the direction that you think you're aiming. But I can say that if you try to improve your ability to help people in the best ways you can, in an honest effort, that if you really do have a capability in something, even if it's not the thing you thought it was, if you're in front of people who can notice, someone will draw you in to help them with those things. And it might not be the direction you thought, but something. So I can't guarantee it'll happen, but if it's going to happen, I think it's better to happen that way.
I guess the benefit is it seems as a higher chance that the direction you're drawn in is going to be a better fit between your natural skills and abilities and what someone needs. So yeah, it seems will be a better natural fit.
That's exactly, I think, the key point. The number one key point is you'll be doing something where you won't feel like a fraud if you do make it. You got nothing, you're not faking it because you only got there because of who you are in your core. You didn't get there because you faked it really well, and now that you're there, you better keep faking it your whole life. I mean, that's a terrifying thought.
All right, great, thank you. Okay. We'll do one or two more of these and then we'll wrap up soon. Automation is the only way to stay competitive for a manufacturing business, or maybe for any business.
I think that's a myth. I think it's true in a lot of cases, but not all cases. So it's like saying, once upon a time, globalization was necessary to be successful. I would say that's true for a lot of companies in manufacturing, but it wasn't the only way. And there's companies that are niche companies that don't have to do that at all. They're valued for very different reasons. But for a lot of companies, maybe it's that 80-20 rule. They did have to do that because that rule did apply to them. The same happened when CNC came on the production floor. So that was automation in production. Companies who took the step stayed in business. That doesn't mean there's no role in the world for craftsmen. I think that's really amazing. And those command high prices and a lot of respect, and they're few and far between. So by no means are these rules, but some of what you're saying, I think, yeah, it's 80-20 in a lot of those cases. So you have to recognize, does it apply to me or not, and be okay when it does and be okay when it doesn't. So the ways that it won't, and when it does apply, it doesn't apply in totality, in absolute terms. So automation today, I think I see it in terms of everyone's swirling with what are we doing with AI? And when they mean usually large language models, and a little bit they mean some big data stuff. But I think that this is kind of like what CNC did on the production floor. This is automation in the administrative side or in the office side, right? And it doesn't have to be something that competes with people. I think it can be something that takes kind of heavyweight administrative or mundane things off of people's back, that unleashes their creative capacity a little bit more. But whether it's a fact that you must be good at this in order to kind of be there tomorrow, or that it's the only thing that's going to determine whether you're there tomorrow, I don't think so. I think the advent of stronger and stronger tools for people to do their research about buying is resulting in people getting closer to their purchase decision, having never spoken to somebody. I think what you want before you make that investment, before you sign something, is if somebody with some expertise could please verify that all this stuff that these things told me is true, because I got a lot of money up riding on this, and I got a lot of risk if it doesn't go right. So all those things are amazing tools, but then the verification of a person becomes that much more important because you had no contact in between. And so like for my company, we were really human on the service side. And I think then with the advent of more and more automation, that human interaction in those key points becomes actually more critical than it ever has been. So we're not losing sight of that while we automate.
Yeah. So it's a good opportunity to maybe automate the bits that kind of very simple for people to do in the past, maybe just led to long delays. Just get that stuff out of the way and get people focused on just doing the bits that only a person can do.
Oh, yeah. So we're a pretty unique little thing, these people, right? We can synthesize in a way that I think nothing else can synthesize yet. And why don't we have people who've been like, and also if they can learn to synthesize well, can they synthesize well with the 20 years of experience that so-and-so in that office has been doing it, right? But they can synthesize all the factors. So yeah, I don't feel that's in jeopardy, but I do feel like we need to use it to support those people.
Okay, great. Thank you for trying out our little myths and truths section there. Tell me something about, are you working on something at Canada Rubber at the moment that you're excited about for the future?
Yeah, so we are actually doing a new ERP implementation. So we're moving from an old software system that was pretty finite to one that handles a lot more parts of the company. Automation is a part of that, but also it's about consistency. So we have a lot of different, like a lot of manufacturers who are listening to this, probably this would resonate with them. You're using a lot of different piecemeal softwares that work independently, which causes a lot of duplication and errors and manual things. So we're looking to improve there. We had spent the last 5 years on a bit of a revenue tear, and we've done really well on that. So we've improved our market share and improved our revenue. And now how do we handle all that the best way possible so we can take the next big step? We're still really focusing on people first. So we kind of outgrew we have a really nice lunchroom, actually. It's one of the things we do invest in, is making sure our common areas are quite nice for staff and for everybody. But we outgrew it in terms of our ability to hold events where people can be in that room together. And also then I think the pandemic happened and everyone kind of started learning how to do their own separate thing, right? Get the food, go back to wherever you work or to your car or whatever it is, right? So what we did about a year ago, so when I became the president officially, within the first week, we bought enough folding tables and chairs that every time we do a lunch or an event, we all sit together again the way it used to be when the company was smaller. So little things like to bring people together. I already mentioned what we do from an events standpoint, and we're still doing a lot more of those things to try to push the boundaries there. We're trying to make sure that people just don't feel like the means to an end, and it's all too easy to feel that way. I mean, and you can't just throw events at people either. I mean, you have to really give them your time and energy. You have to have a conversation and learn what they're working on in their life. So I'll often talk to somebody and while they're kind of sitting down somewhere, maybe they're just ending their break or something like that, or they're at a machine, and we'll just get to talking, and it kind of goes in these wild ways that I don't expect. And then I learn really what they're doing at home. And so we're forcing those values to be front and center in a way that I think in our company they have been in the past, but it's a constant gas, I think, on that side of things. So ERP, those would be the main things we're, I think, doing at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're going to have to wrap this up soon. We've been going for just coming up to an hour now, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. I would just like to, maybe if you could leave us with one thought. For anyone who is running a manufacturing team right now, what would you say would be one quick win to help them focus less on the processes and more on people?
Sure. A small step would be to introduce the routine of asking people what's their biggest headache at work. The reason that I say that, I used to have a heck of a time going company to company and saying, can you tell me what doesn't work about this system? Or can you tell me what parts of your process are weak? Or you use all this language, and it's hard to think about what are the problems, or what are the steps in the process that aren't working, or what are the linkages between processes that don't work, etc. But when you ask somebody, hey, what are the biggest headaches in your day? You get all of that anyway. And so I find that it's an unleashing of feedback, that you'll be less naive in your leadership role, which lets you build. It will result in better processes, but it also might guide better direction in the company, and it might bring you closer to people than you are now. So I think it has a few benefits.
Okay. If you don't mind, if you've got a minute, I would like to ask a follow-up question on that then, on a micro level. So I've had quite a few experiences in automotive type manufacturing companies. I feel I've had situations where I've done a walk around and I've asked questions like that. and I've come away with a gigantic list of headaches that people have. And I maybe haven't handled this that well because I've then felt they've like kind of passed it on to me. It's now my obligation to resolve this gigantic list of headaches. So I'd be interested how you've dealt with that and how that conversation goes. And are you taking responsibility to try and solve that problem or take that headache away for them or not? How do you handle that? How does that conversation go? And what do you follow up with afterwards?
Okay, so I wouldn't do it with everybody all in a day because you will have more than you can. I think you let people down if you don't have any feedback or you don't have any follow up, right? So yeah, you don't want to architect something that's superficial in the first place. I think just get in the routine of doing it little by little. See how it adds to your plate and only take it on at the rate that you can. Now in a consulting, in a role where you're external, we often would first assemble the team. So if there was a process area that needed improvement, we would assemble a team from people either in the process or the suppliers or customers internally of the process. So they were within the company, but just in upward and upstream and downstream processes. So they were kind of stakeholders in how the process went. Or they might receive information or product from that process you're targeting so that they care too. You don't want to just push the waste around the system. So it was after we got to the people who were impacted, the stakeholders in the process, then we asked, what are the headaches to that group? And they were the process improvement group. So it was going to be them helping the improvement. On top of that, I would just, an asterisk that I always give is that, you're not looking to please, you're not looking to try to incorporate every competing idea from every person. And so when there's mutual exclusivity or there's just a ton of overlap that makes the intervention different but duplicate, my saying was, if you mix too many colors together, you get brown. And so we're trying to make something happen, and you could go scenario to scenario and get the same brown muddy mix if all you do is take every single thing to be equal. So oftentimes we would not only go into a process, but we go into a process with an eye for having a clear problem statement and a clear idea of what the current state was and what potentially a future state would look like, so that we would be able to say which of the ideas are really helping us get there versus just arbitrary ideas, right? And they're still worth it, but they're in a different category. So I think we were kind of segmenting the ideas that way. First, by including the people who were going to do the improvement and who did the work. Secondly, by which ones were going to contribute to the future state and solving of the challenge as defined.
Yeah, no, that makes it. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, that makes sense. And you can attack multiple issues and multiple problems, but as you say, not all at the same time. Maybe sequencing one thing after next and grouping it related to whatever the project is at that time. That makes sense to do it that way. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Angelo. That's been a really interesting conversation. Where can people go to find out more about you and about Canada Rubber?
Canada Rubber is CanadaRubberGroup.com, LinkedIn, website. Those are the main ones. There's a Facebook also, but I would say LinkedIn or the website are the best places to go. Website obviously being the primary. And for myself, AngeloD'AmicoCanada.com is a website. There's also Angelo D'Amico Canada on Instagram and Angelo D'Amico on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that. We'll drop links to that in the show description. So yeah, once again, thanks for your time today. That was a brilliant chat. Really good hearing your perspective, on leading kind of a business at the moment. So appreciate your time, Angelo. Thank you.
Great speaking with you, Martin. Take care.